Welcome to today's explainer on advanced English verb patterns. I want you to picture this. A major international business service center nearly went under last week. Why? Because during a high-stakes strategy meeting, a senior manager stood up and said, "We stopped to fund the project," instead of "We stopped funding the project." Just one tiny grammatical slip-up, but it completely flipped the company's financial reality on its head. Today, we're going to see how advanced verb patterns, specifically gerunds and infinitives, aren't just textbook grammar. They are literally survival tools for your business. So here is our agenda for the meeting. First, the high-stakes strategy meeting. 2, verbs changing business meaning. 3, directing teams and people. 4, complex business prepositions. 5, the fossilized arrow clinic. And finally, number 6, the final business directive. All right, kicking things off with section 1, verbs changing business meaning. Let's look at a really crucial question that came up in a recent risk assessment meeting. Did the board stop to evaluate risks, or did they stop evaluating risks? Now, I know that might just sound like a subtle semantic difference, but legally, operationally, it's massive. Think about it. Did we pause what we were doing in order to look at risks, or did we completely cease our risk evaluation altogether? The contrast in how these two play out in a corporate setting is just huge. Hitting that pause button to use the infinitive, to evaluate, means you're prioritizing risk evaluation over everything else. You stopped everything else to do it. But throwing it in the trash with a gerund, evaluating, means you terminated the action itself. You stopped caring about risk entirely. You can definitely see how using the wrong phrase there could cause an absolute panic in the boardroom. It's a really similar story with the verb try. If you stand up and tell stakeholders you are trying to implement a new policy, well, you're basically pushing a boulder up a hill. It implies a real struggle and potential failure. But saying you are trying implementing, now you're putting on the lab goggles. It frames the action as an experiment, a potential creative solution to workflow issues. Your choice of grammar here completely changes how your competence is perceived. And this next example brilliantly illustrates why you absolutely cannot afford to confuse your team with poor instructions. Saying, "Remember to send the report," is a future directive, right? It's an active task on someone's to-do list. But saying, "Remember sending the report," refers to a past memory. So if a manager says, "I remember to send the email," it sounds completely unnatural and totally derails the timeline of the project. Moving right along to section 2, directing teams and people. When we're giving directions to our teams, we quickly discover that many critical verbs need a very specific pattern. It goes the verb, followed by the person, which is the object, and then the infinitive. We're talking about verbs like advise, encourage, permit, and instruct. So if you want to foster a culture of innovation, you wouldn't say, "We encourage to innovate." No way. You have to say, "We encourage employees to innovate." The real takeaway here is that you simply can't skip the object. Take the phrase, "The manager advised the team to restructure the department." You can't just shorten that to "advise to restructure." Without naming the object, you're risking total operational chaos because nobody actually knows who is supposed to execute the task. That brings us to section 3, complex business prepositions. Now, our source material highlights a pretty fascinating quirk of the English language. Prepositions must be followed by nouns. So if we want to put an action word right after a preposition, we have to turn it into a gerund, that ing form. This works exactly like structures where the gerund acts as the subject of a sentence, like when you say financing is important. It turns the action into a solid concept. Now, the tricky part for most of us is when that preposition happens to be the word to, because we usually associate to with infinitives. Think about phrases like commit to, object to, and the classic look forward to. Because they end in a preposition, they absolutely demand an ing gerund, not an infinitive. If you write in an email, "We commit to finish the project," your grammatical structure is breaking down right at the most critical moment of agreement. It has to be commit to finishing. All right, let's step into section 4, the fossilized error clinic. Omitting the gerund in these phrases isn't just a slight passing mistake. It's often a fossilized habit inherited from earlier levels of learning, and it can seriously undermine your professional credibility. Say you use "I am looking forward to meet you," or "I suggest to hire him." Those might sound completely natural to a lot of non-native speakers, but the professional standard requires meeting, working, and hiring. And just a quick side note on the verb suggest, it never takes an infinitive directly after it, ever. Another super common fossilized error is confusing the meaning of the verb regret. You want to use the infinitive to formally deliver bad news, like, I regret to inform you that the budget is cut. But you use the gerund to express remorse for a past mistake, like, I regret saying that in the meeting. It's literally the exact same verb, but it serves a totally different corporate function based entirely on what comes after it. And now we arrive at Section 5, the final business directive. I want you to imagine this scenario. The CEO demands to know why our Bratislava service center's revenue just plummeted this quarter. You have to explain to her that we cut the marketing budget. So which directive accurately does that? Do you tell her A, we stopped to-fund marketing, or B, we stopped funding marketing? I want you to take a second and really think about what you are actually saying with each option. Well, if you went with option A, you just told this CEO that you diverted all company resources into marketing. You literally paused your core operations just to funnel them more money. Option B, we stopped funding, is the scissors. It correctly means you completely severed the money supply to that department. So option B is definitely the correct explanation for a budget cut. A grammatical slip-up like this could genuinely ruin a business. It brings to mind an exasperated fictional CEO yelling, "So let me get this straight. We didn't cut the budget. We paused everything else to give them more money. You're fired." It's funny, but it proves a crucial point. Mastering these advanced patterns isn't just about passing an English test. It is about precision. It's about protecting your company's bottom line. So the next time you speak up in a strategy meeting, will your verbs save the company or sink it?